Some characters' origin stories were so strange, so impossible to take seriously, that even the publishers quietly wished they could delete them. A feared enemy created by a typo. A terrifying threat born from a plot twist no writer could explain later. And a major villain whose entire backstory was so bizarre that editors nearly pretended it never happened. These weren't bold creative risks. They were mistakes that somehow survived. So which Marvel characters came from origins so weird they were almost deleted? Here are 10 Marvel characters. Origin stories so weird they were almost deleted. At number 10, we have Mandrill, who was first introduced in Shauna the She-Devil issue. In 1973, Marvel planned Mandrill as a dangerous mutant who could lead an army and challenge heroes with strategy and fear. But his actual origin pushed him toward being removed from the spotlight. He was born Jerome Beachman after his parents were exposed to radiation during scientific work. The exposure caused his body to grow dark fur and simian features from birth, even though both parents were white. This sudden transformation isolated him from his family and community. He later discovered he could release pheromones that allowed him to control women, and he used this ability to build the group known as Black Spectre. The combination of his appearance, his powers, and the uncomfortable implications around his birth made Marvel distance themselves from the character. After limited use through the years, he was eventually killed during the Great Hunt storyline. His origin became one of Marvel's most avoided backstories. At number 9, we have Swarm, who was first introduced in Champions issue 14 in 1977. Swarm was created to be a terrifying new enemy who could overwhelm heroes with thousands of intelligent bees, acting as one body. Marvel designed him as a living nightmare, a threat that teams like the Champions and Spider-Man would struggle to even touch. But his origin pushed him so far into the bizarre that Marvel used him less and less over the years. Fritz von Meyer was a former Nazi scientist hiding in South America, where he discovered a hive of bees mutated by a fallen meteor. When he tried to control them, the bees devoured him and absorbed his consciousness. The hive formed a living body around his remaining skeleton, turning him into a walking mass of bees. This unusual combination made Marvel treat Swarm carefully. He was defeated easily in several stories, and then removed from major plots for long periods. His origin was so strange that it pushed the character toward near erasure from ongoing continuity. At number 8, we have Hate-Monger, who was first introduced in Fantastic Four, issue 21 in 1963. Hate-Monger was created to represent the most destructive force inside society, a figure who could turn entire crowds against each other with a device called the Hate Ray. Marvel intended him to be a serious psychological threat, someone who could twist emotions and push heroes to confront the darkest parts of human nature. But the moment his mask came off, the story took a direction that pushed Marvel toward distancing themselves from him. The unmasking revealed that Hate-Monger was a clone of Adolf Hitler, created after the war and operating in secret. The clone used advanced technology to incite riots and manipulate people, and each time he was defeated, a new clone emerged. The weight of connecting a real historical figure to a costumed villain made Marvel move the character out of major storylines. He eventually ended up trapped inside a cosmic cube, and the identity was later reused by unrelated characters, allowing Marvel to leave the original version behind. At number 7, we have the Terrible Tinkerer, who was first introduced in Amazing Spider-Man issue 2 in 1963. The Terrible Tinkerer began as a quiet threat in Spider-Man's early years. He appeared to be an ordinary repairman who used his skills to plant hidden devices inside radios and electronics. Marvel designed him to be a grounded villain who relied on intelligence rather than strength, someone who could test Spider-Man in a different way. But his first appearance led to an origin that pushed Marvel toward removing the idea entirely. Spider-Man discovered that the Tinkerer was working with a group of green aliens in a basement workshop. When unmasked, the Tinkerer revealed what looked like an alien face before escaping. The sudden jump into alien infiltration clashed with the world that Spider-Man lived in. The reaction pushed Marvel to quietly ignore the story for years. Later, writers rewrote the entire event and explained that the aliens were criminals in costumes hired to confuse Spider-Man. This allowed Marvel to erase the alien angle and keep the Tinkerer as a human villain. The next three dive even deeper into Marvel's strangest experiments: a genius turned monster, a god rewritten, and a legend undone by his own origin. At number 6, we have M.O.D.O.K, first introduced in Tales of Suspense issue 94 in 1967. George Tarleton was an ordinary AIM technician until the organization forced him into a device known as the Alteration Chamber. The experiment was meant to create a living supercomputer, someone who could process information faster than any machine. Instead, it mutated him into something far stranger. His head expanded to massive proportions, his limbs shriveled, and his mind became so hyper-enhanced that he lost his sanity. AIM initially labeled him M.O.D.O.K, mental organism designed only for computing. But the transformation twisted him so violently that he rebelled, killed his handlers, took over AIM, and renamed himself M.O.D.O.K, designed only for killing. His appearance was so bizarre that Marvel struggled to decide whether he was a terrifying mastermind or a dark joke. Writers repeatedly shifted his tone, killed him off, resurrected him, and introduced replacements like M.O.D.O.M when his design became too difficult to use seriously. The origin was never deleted, but it constantly pushed Marvel to sideline or temporarily abandon him. At number 5, we have the Beyonder, who was first introduced in Secret Wars issue 1 in 1984. The Beyonder arrived as a being with limitless power who existed beyond the entire Marvel multiverse. He pulled heroes and villains onto a world he created and forced them into conflict, presenting himself as an entity with no origin, no limits, and no equal. His role was to stand above every cosmic force Marvel had established. But the years that followed changed him so dramatically that Marvel struggled to keep his identity stable. He was later rewritten as an incomplete cosmic cube whose power was tied to Molecule Man. Another retcon described him as a mutant inhuman who gained near godlike strength after exposure to Terrigen mists. Later stories introduced the idea that he was only one member of a larger Beyonder race. Each change reduced the impact of his first appearance and pushed Marvel to step away from the character. His shifting origins made him difficult to use. At number 4, we have Dark Phoenix, who was first introduced in Uncanny X-Men issue 101. In 1976, Dark Phoenix began as the next stage of Jean Grey's power, and readers believed they were watching a hero lose control of abilities too large for any human to contain. By 1980, her fall was shown as a tragic transformation that ended with her sacrificing herself on the moon to protect the universe from the damage she had caused. For years, this story defined Jean Grey's legacy and shaped how the X-Men viewed the cost of power and loyalty. Everything changed in 1986, when Marvel revealed that the woman who became Dark Phoenix was not Jean at all. The real Jean Grey had been placed in suspended animation after the shuttle crash, and the Phoenix Force created a perfect duplicate using her memories and appearance. This retcon separated Jean from the genocide and removed her death from her own history. The duplicate became the villain, while the real Jean returned with no knowledge of the destruction committed in her name. The final 3 show how far Marvel went, rewriting mutants, erasing gods, and destroying legacies that once defined entire eras. At number 3, we have Romulus, who was first introduced in Wolverine. Origins issue 2 in 2007, Romulus entered Marvel canon as a hidden force who claimed to have shaped Wolverine's entire life. He was presented as an ancient mutant whose influence stretched back thousands of years. His story described him as the leader of a secret Lupine race, a group said to be separate from ordinary humans. Romulus stated that figures like Wolverine and Sabretooth were not mutants, but members of this Lupine lineage. He also claimed responsibility for Wolverine's losses, his time in Weapon X, and the major events that defined his past. This attempt to rewrite Wolverine's history led to immediate issues. The idea of a forgotten wolf-based species contradicted years of X-Men storytelling, and the suggestion that Wolverine was not a mutant conflicted with long-established facts. Marvel responded by moving away from Romulus soon after the storyline ended. Later comics reaffirmed Wolverine's status as a mutant and rarely mentioned the Lupine concept again. Romulus was gradually phased out. At number 2, we have Zorn, who was first introduced in New X-Men Annual 2001, with the major reveal occurring in 2004. Zorn was introduced as a new ally to the X-Men, a quiet healer who wore a metal mask to contain the energy of a star inside his head. He taught students, earned their trust, and appeared to be a peaceful presence in their lives. Near the end of the storyline, he removed his mask and claimed to be Magneto in disguise, revealing that he had infiltrated the X-Men to rebuild his army and strike again. The story showed him using magnetic powers and leading an attack that caused massive destruction. Months later, Marvel reversed the entire revelation. They published news stories stating that the man unmasked in New York was not Magneto, but an imposter named Zorn. They also introduced a twin brother to explain further contradictions. This reversal created confusion and pushed Marvel to stop using the Zorn identity for years. And at number 1, we have Gabriel and Sarah Stacy, who was first introduced in 2004. During the Sins Past storyline, Gabriel and Sarah Stacy were brought into Spider-Man's world as a secret from Gwen Stacy's past. Their arrival was meant to strike Peter Parker on the deepest emotional level, because the twins targeted him believing he was responsible for their mother's death. The story revealed that the twins were born to Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn, and that Norman had raised them in hiding. Due to the Goblin formula in Norman's system, the twins grew rapidly and reached adulthood in a few years. Gabriel later adopted a Goblin identity and attacked Spider-Man, while Sarah struggled between the lies she was taught and the truth about Gwen. The storyline brought strong criticism, and Marvel eventually replaced the entire explanation. Years later, it was revealed that the twins were artificial creations made by Harry Osborn using implanted memories. This correction removed the idea of Gwen having children with Norman, and the characters disappeared from future storylines once the retcon was completed. Thanks for watching the video. Comment below with your favorite part, and press the subscribe button and bell icon for regular updates.